Welcome back, everyone. Madam Secretary, can you let us know when we're recording again?
Megan, it looks like we're recording.
Okay.
Left there.
Just want to make sure. Rebecca, are we recording now? Yep. All right. I got the nod. All right. We're going to restart our meeting tonight. We just met in executive session as a committee with public comment. Tonight for public comment, I have 3 comments, so I will begin reading those tonight. The first is coming from Heidi Leahy. Good evening. Heidi Leahy, 166 Bullard Road in Holden. I'm the multi-sensory reading teacher for the Wachusett Regional School District, writing as an individual educator, asking the committee to join other school committees in supporting the MASC resolution on MCAS. Our Governor Charlie Baker, the Education Secretary Jim Pizer, and the Commissioner of Education Jeff Riley continue to demand the reopening of schools to address the educational, physical, and emotional well-being of students. Pediatricians are seeing unhealthy weight gain in children and an uptick in mental health. We know there has been significant challenges in many districts around providing and engaging students in ongoing learning. Clearly, there will be gaps to close when we have come out the other side of this pandemic. This is not that time. The state is demanding that districts do in-person access testing for ELLs. They're proposing in-person MCAS possibly as early as January, the height of flu season. Meanwhile, Wachusett inches ever closer to returning large numbers of our children to school under hybrid with a variety of options for students. The strength of the connections created between teachers and students, even during remote instruction, has prompted parents to demand that the same teachers will continue to teach all students who are assigned to them in September, regardless of cohort choice. The continuation of current teachers during hybrid was pushed on the WRSD reopening FAQ site under teaching and learning. Parents should understand that this decision prioritizes connection over education. Teachers who are already working at maximum capacity to manage one model of instruction are not going to be able to manage multiple models under hybrid simultaneously with the same level of expertise and support for students. The multitude of demands being placed on educators must be clearly stated to students and families. Otherwise, educators are being set up to fail and take the blame. Our students and staff deserve better. Students working fully remote deserve a teacher who's available to work with them to provide focused and targeted synchronous and asynchronous instruction at feedback at various points in the day. Students returning to school buildings deserve the full attention of the teacher. Teachers will now be responsible for educating kids on COVID protocols and procedures, monitoring safety, teaching content curriculum, and addressing the physical and psychological needs of students during a pandemic. Students working at home on the alternating remote days deserve a teacher who can instruct and support them in real time without having their attention split between the students in the classroom and remote. When educators tell you they're already working at full capacity, you need to believe and support them. Parents should understand that they are sacrificing the best possible pandemic education in exchange for a preferred location, while assuming a significant public health risk to their family and the community at large. Given everything this committee and the community appears to expect from our educators, I call on the Wachusett Regional School District School Committee to sign on to the Mass Association of School Committees resolution to suspend MCAS for 2020-21 school year. There's no educational value whatsoever in administering MCAS during pandemic, and the administration of MCAS will further decrease time on learning while adding yet another mental health stressor for children. Let's get one thing done to reduce stress on children and educators. Support the MASC resolution. Thank you. Next tonight, we're going to hear from Lily Michalowski in Holden, Mass. Dear school committee members, my name is Lily Michalowski. I live in Holden and I'm a freshman at Monty Tech. I'm writing you because I want to share with you I had an experience in school last year in the hopes that I'll start a conversation in the district about adaptive games in PE classes. I was born with spina bifida, which is a physical disability that impacts me in a lot of different ways and makes doing sports and other physical activities more challenging than it is for others. I participated in PE classes throughout elementary school, but in middle school, my physical challenges were the primary reasons why I didn't take PE. Missing PE was okay with me, but it did take away a fun class where I would have a chance to interact with my classmates in a different way. Outside of school, I've been participating in adaptive sports for a number of years, training in swimming and in track. Last school year, before schools closed down, I completed my Girl Scout Silver Award project. For my project, I hosted a sitting volleyball clinic, and my goal was to educate others and spread awareness for adaptive sports. During the project, I worked with Miss LeBlanc and some members of last year's volleyball team, and after the clinic was completed, I was able to come to a couple of 8th grade gym classes and teach some students who might not have participated in my clinic how to play sitting volleyball. One thing I learned as a result was that many students didn't know about adaptive sports. They thought it'd be less competitive than traditional volleyball, but their minds changed by the end of the clinic. When I came to PE classes to teach sitting volleyball, a small number of students chose to learn that versus the traditional game. Though I really appreciate that my teacher let me come into the class, it would be great if the district considered a curriculum for PE that included adaptive games on a regular basis. There's a lot of kids that could benefit from adaptive games, not just kids with physical issues, but many others who might feel like they aren't as athletic as their peers. I hope the leaders of the district will think about my experience and consider changing the PE curriculum to include adaptive games. Thank you for considering my request. Finally, tonight, we're going to hear from Mary Shepard. Good evening. My name is Mary Shepard, president of the Wachusett Regional Educator Association, 1320 Wachusett Street in Jefferson. Tonight, I asked the school committee and district administrators, are you listening to the educators in your schools? At Hvac Elementary School in Rutland, students are taught to listen with their ears, their eyes, their body language, and their hearts. They are instructed on how to truly listen to others, a skill many adults still strive to perfect, myself included. Let's reflect on some district communication breakdowns. First, because Wachusett is a large district, any message sent to parents and students should be well-developed, concise, and clearly written. For instance, this is just one of several examples teachers found out about the hybrid model on a Friday afternoon via an email post on Facebook from a parent. Why couldn't that message go out to teachers at the same time, maybe ahead of time with some directives, so staffs were prepared to field questions? The lack of communication divides us as a community. Staff members felt omitted from correspondence that should have brought everyone together as we move forward during a pandemic. We need the district administration to embrace, not reject, a community-centered culture and bridge the many personal agendas by listening for understanding. Second, in one of our professional development sessions with Jessica Minahan, a board-certified behavior analysis author, special educator, and consultant to schools internationally, we learned that when anxiety increases, these skills decrease. Self-regulation, thought stopping, social skills, executive functioning skills, and flexible thinking. Let's think about this for a minute. We are in a pandemic and our anxieties are high for teachers, parents, and students. For many WREA members who've transitioned and will transition to hybrid, these concerns overwhelm them. What do I need to teach in hybrid? Will I receive training, or do I have to figure it out myself again? Do I or my students wipe their desk down every hour, every day, every cohort change? What kinds of chemicals will I be exposed to cleaning? What about HVAC systems? Is the air safe? How will I keep the cohorts in the same pace? Do parents understand with the hybrid model there'll be less face-to-face time with teachers? How come I haven't heard anything yet? When will I hear something? I want someone to listen. I have concerns. I want answers. My success in prior planning affects the success of my students. Please listen if you understand these challenges need real and concrete solutions. Third, we have teachers in the buildings. We have students in the buildings. What we do not have are district administrators in the buildings. In fact, the one administrator who did enter a school declined to enter a room to protect the bubble. What bubble? These students and staff go back to the community every day, just as the administrator does. If that person doesn't feel safe, how can WREA members? Safety concerns are real for special educators in the buildings. Special education staff are working in close proximity to students, reminding students to wear masks and socially distance throughout the day. Despite these efforts, the classrooms have been affected by COVID positive cases. With the rising COVID cases in the communities all around, the governor has actually increased precautions for the general public, yet decreased the metrics for keeping schools open. We understand this is blatantly contradictory. Don't hold Thanksgiving dinner with more than 10 guests, but put 23 kids on the school bus and more in a school. Is Deci's office open to the public? Why aren't we holding school committee meetings in person? How will you lead by example? Educators are listening to understand and want to know how this contradiction can be cleared up. Finally, WREA members would like to know, are we ready to bring even more students back? Planning takes time, it takes vision and intuition. Our orientation day, originally scheduled for September 1st, is now a TBD day in the district calendar and must be used by the end of the school year. Teachers want this day to complete the transition into hybrid and call for an opportunity to meet with Dr. McCall to answer questions about the hybrid experience. Not only would that show the district understands the immense pressure teachers face entering the hybrid model, it would also empower district educators and us to allow assurance and strength to our students. We are all human beings on life's journey, so let's start acting like it. We must raise our words, not our voices, and begin the healing process our nation's president-elect is talking about. Let us listen to each and understand each other and make connections to create community-centered culture where everyone belongs. Next on our agenda tonight are chair's opening remarks. I'm going to forego my remarks in the pursuit of a timely meeting. Next, we hear from our student reps, Kenichi and Catherine.
Everybody. So tonight I do have a few things. So our sports teams are entering pod playoffs this week. So that includes our boys soccer team who plays tonight, our girls soccer team plays tomorrow night, and then our cross country teams and then field hockey play on Wednesday. Oh wait, maybe I was a day off on that. Yeah, I think I had it right. The other thing is, sorry about that. And then the other thing is our Spirit Week happened this week or last week. So we had a PJ day, a sports day, a mass day, color wars, and then a green and white day. And so all the different grades, including the staff, competed against each other. And then our student council has been reading books to younger students within the district. So the most recent one they did was a Halloween book read, and so student council members went into classrooms at Mayo, Paxton, and Glenwood and read to those students. So that was a fun thing that happened for the holiday. And then our Echo is back up and running, which is the Wachusett school newspaper. So that wants to read about what's going on in the school. And then last week and this week, our guidance has been working with the Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services to provide SEL workshops for juniors or sophomores and juniors. And so they did one last week for sophomores, and then this Thursday, there'll be a workshop for the juniors. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Kenichi, anything from you? Aw, all right, next time. I need to take one thing out of order on the agenda tonight. We do have a, we're going to take one committee report out of order because I have a representative from Hvac with us, and I want to get to them before the end of the agenda tonight. So taking that single committee report out of order. Melissa, are you with us tonight? Okay.
Yes, we're here.
You have the floor.
Okay. All right. Good evening, and thank you for adding us to your agenda this evening. My name is Tammy Todd. I am a newly elected co-chair to the Wachusett Regional School District Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And with me tonight is Melissa Martin, who has been on as co-chair for the past 3 years to the Hvac. The Special Education Parent Advisory Council is a state-mandated council, which is one of the few regulations under old Chapter 766, which was left in place when the state went from the state level maximum feasible benefit to the federal level of free and appropriate education. What is a CPAC? A CPAC is a Special Education Parent Advisory Council. Every public school district in Massachusetts is required to establish a CPAC. Massachusetts state law assigns both advisory and participatory function to the CPACs. A CPAC is a public body which serves as an advisor to the school committee on matters that pertain in education and safety of students with disabilities. In addition, the CPAC has the duty to meet regularly with the school officials to participate in the planning and development and evaluation of the school district's special education programs. The CPAC is a self-governing body, creates its own bylaws and procedures, and is open to all parents of children with disabilities and anyone interested parties. A CPAC is different from a PTA, a PTO, or a SIMCO. It does not represent families from one school, but serves all families of children with special needs for the entire school district. Massachusetts state law and regs of a CPAC, Chapter 71, Section 1C, workshops on the rights of students and their parents under special education laws in the Commonwealth and federal government. Each school district shall conduct, in cooperation with the Parents Advisory Council, at least one workshop annually. And for the students, their guardians, their parents, the special education laws of the Commonwealth and for the federal government shall make written materials explaining such rights available. Massachusetts Regulations 603 CMR 2807. Each school district shall create a district-wide parent advisory council offering membership to all parents eligible for special education and interested parties. The parent advisory council duties shall include, but not be limiting to, advising the district on matters pertaining to the education, safety of all students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials, and participating planning and development. Parent Advisory Council shall establish bylaws regarding operational procedures. The Parent Advisory Council shall receive assistance from the district school committee, the district school, without charge, upon reasonable notice, and subject to the availability of the staff and resources. So, the reason we read this to you and wanted to know, because I know that this is unusual for us to speak. It hasn't been done in years past. In fact, it probably hasn't done since I started the CPAC in 1998. But we did have a seat on the school committee at that time. We wanted to share with you our goals for this year. We want to revise our bylaws and go over them. We want to meet with the district special education administration on a regular basis for the purpose of evaluating, developing, and planning the school district's educational programs. We have already reached out to Christine Smith, the director of special education, invited her to meet with us along with her staff. Christine has enthusiastically accepted, and our first meeting is going to be December 8th. So we're really looking forward to that. We are also looking forward to meeting with the Wachusett Regional School District Committee, since we are the board that does report to you directly, at least once every quarter. We want to be able to share and receive feedback from you as a committee. This year will be viewed as an organizational year, as the format is new to our district, to our school committee, and to the administration. This is something that we realize that you are not used to. We would also want to invite anyone from the public who has a child on an IEP or a 504 plan, and we encourage you to join us as we move forward with this new direction. We also encourage any teachers, staff members, administrators to join us as well. Your voice does matter, and we do encourage you to join us. We are looking forward to working with each and every one of you throughout this next year, 2021. Thank you for your time this evening. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing with us tonight. And just to let the committee know, this is the direction we'll be going in, hearing from CVAC quarterly, and not just as a report, to have a kind of a back and forth dialogue. We're not really prepared for the back and forth dialogue tonight, but if you guys have some quick questions or comments, just to thank Tammy for coming on, I'd be amenable to that. I have Adam, Member Young, I'm sorry.
I will defer to Malaya if she would like to speak first. It is her committee report time.
Oh, I can't hear you though.
I can't hear you, Malaya.
It's actually Tammy's report, so we've uncovered all this.
Okay.
Right?
Well, even better. So, Malaya, I can't hear you, but I'll jump in until you figure out your sound. I mean, I 100% report this, support this. I think it's a really, really good move. You know, that just so everybody knows, I mean, this CPAC, this is our responsibility to make sure it's there.
Yep.
It's our responsibility to make sure that we're getting input from them. It's our responsibility to make sure that we're giving them feedback, and it's our responsibility to make sure that our administration is doing what they want. So, you know, I absolutely, Tammy, great job, good report. You know, let us know what you need, and we look forward to hearing from you. And that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You put a smile on our faces tonight, and I look forward to working with you more closely. Malia, I got a thumb, but no voice.
Am I back? Can you
Yes,
hear me now?
yes, I gotcha.
Okay, I'm sorry. I could hear you all, so that's weird. What I was going to say, and I missed the very end of Adam because I had to relog in. But what
Everyone's happy, and they're looking forward to working with CPAC.
I just wanted to say thank you because I know it took some organizing and creativeness to get this on the agenda after a long agenda. So I appreciate that. I know that, I mean, I'm the liaison and in such, I help them get to this, but I don't make decisions with CPAC. They make their own decisions. I just relay information. So if there are questions, you can certainly funnel them through me also, because I go to their officer meetings. I am going to one tomorrow. They do have an officer meeting tomorrow night, which is posted publicly, so anyone can join. But I appreciate their willingness to have a more open dialogue and Megan's willingness to allow it as well and facilitate that. So thank you all. I think that's a good direction. So.
And quickly before we move on, Tammy, we have two absolutely wonderful student reps here, Kenichi and Catherine, who've also developed a really great resourced website for people of the district. So if you guys can connect, I'm sure they would link to your email address and other things that CPAC posts.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you.
And
You're welcome.
Chair Weeks, if I could just jump in. So
Sure.
I've been working with Tammy now for probably 20 years, Tammy, give or take.
Yeah, at least.
At least. So, you know, we're just really thankful that you're going to be participating. You and Melissa just, you know, going through this process and just having more involvement, because I really feel as though it's a great way to go. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And thank you for bearing with a quick agenda change on the fly as we work through this kind of last minute today. We're going to now move into the superintendent's report. Again, we're going to have Daryl highlight some things. I'm sure there's a lot to highlight. But for members, I'm going to be very strict about our 2 minutes tonight, as it is already 9:12 in the evening. There's a couple policies that we absolutely have to get to this evening after the superintendent's report. So again, a very strict 2 minutes. We'll go round table when we do begin this. And again, for school committee members especially, it's essential to keep your camera on if you have the bandwidth to do so. So Dr. McCall, you ready?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Week. So I have a small presentation to do for you this evening, just in terms of an update. So I thought it would be a little easier to do a visual for everyone. So what I'm going to do is share my screen with everyone, and then we can, you know, I'll go through this. So I'll just do this. And just someone let me know if that's working, because I can't see anybody.
Yes, it's working.
Thank you so much.
You had about 10 thumbs ups, and then you said you couldn't see us. So
Yeah. All I can see is my screen. So, yeah, again, this is just wanted to go through some of the information that people have been asking about in reference to transitioning to the hybrid model, remote model, and again, this is just something that Bob's going to jump in a little bit. Brendan will jump in a little bit, and we'll talk through these. So this is just kind of the overview of what we're looking at as we transition to hybrid. So we'll talk a little bit about facilities, a little bit about transportation, touch base on the family model selection results. We'll also talk about the health and safety metrics. We'll also discuss instruction and then just communication plan, which is a big one toward the end. So facilities analysis, this goes along with the building ventilation capacity that we've been talking about for the past several weeks. So Deci guidance, it's really, the overall guidance is to look at increasing outdoor air ventilation instead of using recirculated air, and increase air filtration as much as possible for ventilation and filtration systems. So along with that, one of the things, several things that they offer up are items such as adjusting HVAC settings, opening windows or doors, prevent or minimize air recirculation, and also maintain ventilation for longer hours. So what we've been doing is we've been looking at the Deci guidance and tapping into the guidance in order to make sure that our buildings, when they open fully in a few weeks or next week, we have the capacity to bring staff and students in safely. So other guidance that we've been using include guidance from Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And, again, that comes down to looking at ventilation systems operating properly and increasing air circulation of outdoor air as much as possible. And one of the items that they note, and Deci also notes this, is that if they say not to open windows if there's a risk of a student falling or asthma or safety security concerns are something that's also there as well. So these are all things that we're looking at as we kind of move forward. And we're also looking, the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard has also put out quite a bit of documentation pertaining to schools reopening. And they talk about there are times when you can't actually have additional outdoor air in. So on those days when windows are open, they're really talking about the highest tolerable amount of outdoor air should still be used when the ventilation systems, might not be able to recirculate the type of air. And they even say, if it's really cold, have students wear a jacket indoors during winters, which is probably going to be similar to what happens on the buses, where buses have their windows cracked just a little bit. I've talked about this with school committee, I believe at the last meeting, and we've been talking about this at our facilities and security subcommittee meeting. The fact that we've brought on ATC, and environmental engineers, they're a company out of Worcester, and ATC has done 2 air assessments. They did one prior to us bringing students back in for our special ed programs, and they've just completed a second one, and we're waiting for their report. So again, they're looking at kind of air exchange per hour, how that looks in a sampling of spaces throughout the district. So they're looking at all of our schools, and they did another, I think, 75 to 80 spaces. So in terms of a heating and ventilation update, so all of our air handlers have new filters. Any of the issues that we've discovered or are being brought forth, we'll have those rectified prior to November 18th. I've told you this, we have airflow meters as well as carbon dioxide meters that we've purchased that will be utilized by our own support staff as we check air throughout the building, and we'll keep track of all of those. Exhaust fans have been checked. Air dampers have been opened fully to ensure that there's a maximum amount of air that's going to be allowed into the room from the outside. And then air handlers are set to start at least an hour before and an hour after students are in the building, just to keep the air moving right off the bat. Classroom social distancing capacity. So this is another thing. This is I believe that's central tree from the floor. That's what it looks like. And again, what we did here was we used a tool, and there's a link actually in this slideshow that I will post online and we'll share with all of the school committee members. That was developed by Canon Design, and it calculates socially distanced classrooms. So all of our building principals worked with Deputy Berlow at doing this, and all of our classrooms are 3 to 6 feet of spacing between them. Probably about 85% of the classrooms are 6 feet, and then it drops down a little bit for that 15%. So as you can see in this classroom at Central Tree, they have their 6 feet of space. And then all cafeteria seating has at least 6 feet of space between students. Transportation capacity analysis. Again, these are some items that we've talked about in the past, but all students are required to wear masks according to the state guidance on transportation. Students should sit no more than one per bench, and they'll alternate sides for each row, which means basically there's about 3 foot of distance. They do allow for students from the same household to sit together and in closer proximity, which is one of the things we're looking at as we develop bus routes. Ventilation, I just mentioned this a little earlier, keeping windows open unless it's extreme weather conditions, windows open to keep the air circulation throughout the bus moving. And then students having assigned seats. All students in our district will have assigned seats for busing. They'll be on one bus and one seat all year. This is a way, again, the top right-hand side shows the picture of the bus, how students would be sitting. Our bus capacity right now is basically for 24 students, which is about 32% of the typical capacity that our buses have. Based upon the most up-to-date information that Barry has shared with me in reference to how this is playing out in terms of the number of students looking for bus services, we're averaging about 18 students. And then bus routes are being finalized over the next week, and ultimately you're going to be fine-tuned based upon bus ridership. But again, as we look at this, we want to just make sure that people understand we're doing everything in our power just to try to help families figure out the best bus routes are really important for us to follow up on. And again, our AA transportation is doing a fantastic job at working so late in the year at pulling this together. And the good thing is they've done this in a couple of other districts that opened up earlier than us. So they kind of know the subtle nuances that they have to deal with moving forward. And again, with transportation, one of the things we're going to be doing is offering up more entryways into the school in reference to social distancing. So that will allow kids to be able to come in. There will be hand washing stations as they come into the buildings. There are going to be defined parent pickup and drop off areas. Hand sanitizing stations will be on each bus. So when a student gets onto the bus, they'll sanitize their hands. And then we'll also have suggested time for walkers in order to stagger entrance into the building. So we don't have everyone kind of convening into the buildings at the same time. This is the family model selection results. And again, this is the learning model based upon hybrid and remote in terms of what families chose. So about 79% chose hybrid, 5,098 students, and 21% or 1,393 students chose remote. And this was, these were the final numbers based upon our October 23rd kind of deadline to get that information into Power School. In terms of model selection change, we've already had many families kind of reach out and say, well, you know what, I'd really like to switch to this model or that model. One thing that we, have been able to convey to families, and please, we want to make sure they understand, it's not a overnight, it's not an overnight concept where we are able to just flip the switch and move a student from remote to hybrid. Primarily because we have to look at busing, we have to look at spacing in classrooms, we have to look at cohort numbers and so forth. So it does take time. So, we just ask that families are patient if they make that decision to move from one model to another. Health and safety metrics. Again, as we've kind of looked at this, we have several different places where information has come to us. So we have our Center for Disease Control, and there's actually a readiness tool that they have put together, as well as a screening for students for symptoms of COVID-19. And all of these links are live. There's also the Massachusetts chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics. And again, that's all about, it's a decision tool on COVID testing. And then Deci has also put together several scenarios in reference to school, bus, or community settings. And those are really protocols responding to COVID. Many of those protocols have been put into play in our reopening of school plans, and basically the district plan that was put forth a few weeks ago. Deci, really key considerations there from Deci. They're really not recommending universal symptom screenings right now by schools. They strongly recommend that families monitor their children for any infectious illness that they might think their child might have, and really encourage students to stay home who are sick and not come into school. And then from the Massachusetts chapter of American Academy of Pediatrics, again, when we're talking about in the annual flu vaccine, unless there are some other conditions that would not behoove a student, they're really encouraging that all families have their students vaccinated this year for the flu. And there's also a decision tool and a parent FAQ that comes up after this. This is one that is really nice because it has everything together in terms of the symptoms, in terms of what the kind of tree looks like in terms of testing. Here's what happens. Do you test? Here's no, yes, as you look at that. What the isolation means, what quarantine means. And ultimately, these are things that I think are helpful for families as they kind of go through this. I can tell you that Brendan Keenan, our director of SEL, who has done a bang-up job at just pulling a lot of information together at the district level, he also has information that we will be sharing as well. And again, this is another one talking about quarantine and testing. So again, major considerations that we've taken into account when we've looked at Deci guidance. It's really about making sure that we're taking many different strategies into play when we're looking at the entire process. So having staff monitor themselves, making sure staff and students stay home if they're ill, making sure that students are wearing masks and staff are wearing masks. Hand hygiene has to be first and foremost in terms of people, making sure that they're washing their hands or using a disinfectant. Physical distance, again, doing our best to, have students and staff maintain their physical distance, having cohorts and assigned seats, and then really having a way to communicate with families as we kind of go through this process. And I can tell you, we've already had a few cases here in the district, and our boards of health have been fantastic at working with us. And, we've been able to communicate with families, as quickly as we can as the information comes to us. These are some more helpful parent resources from the CDC. This is a document that Director Keenan pulled together in terms of basically a return to school plan. I reviewed this at our town hall with families a couple of weeks ago, but this goes through and talks about the different kind of different type of experiences that you might have. So if you have symptoms and test positive for COVID-19, if a close contact tests positive for COVID-19, COVID-19 symptoms, diagnosis, alternative diagnosis, COVID-19 symptoms and negative COVID test results, and COVID-19 symptoms but not tested. So those are all kind of the ways in which you could possibly move forward with that. And this is another one of Brendan's documents. So when will the district notify my family about a COVID-19 case? And again, this kind of lays out how, if that happens, and how it would happen. And again, protocols for closing of a classroom, the building, or the district. And on Friday, last Friday, we had a quick 5-minute call with a commissioner who basically told superintendents that the governor was going to make some make an announcement on Friday afternoon concerning the new metrics that the state has come up with in reference to the color coding associated with COVID-19. And because of that, we're going to be working on some draft protocols with our Facilities and Security Subcommittee at our next meeting, as the target continues to change in terms of how that is playing out. This is the updated Deci guidance, and this is important. I shared with principals as soon as this came out on Friday afternoon, but districts are expected to prioritize in-person learning, regardless of what color your community is in. Districts and schools in communities designated gray, green, or yellow are expected to have students learning fully in person if feasible. Of course, our transportation here it's an issue in our district, getting everyone in, so that would be a challenge. Schools in red communities should implement hybrid models while maximizing in-person learning time for high-need students, something that we continue to do even though we're not red. The highest COVID-19 caseloads, again, those are communities, I believe there are about 15 or 16 communities now that dropped dramatically after they changed the metric last Friday. They'll continue to look at having strategies for their own in-school health risks, and fully remote instructional models should only be implemented as a last resort, which is why we're looking at what we can do to get our kids back into the building. Again, this is the new color coding in terms of how this is playing out. So if you look at under 10,000, more than 25 total cases, that was a lower number before, if you were to be red. So they've kind of modified all of these numbers from red, yellow, green, and gray. And this is a color map and or a map, and this little place here is Holden, that's yellow, and right here the green one is Paxton. So we have two communities right now that are not red, but both of those communities, if we had our metric that had been in play last week at this time, both of those communities would have been red this week, as would probably have half the state. Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about the PPE that we've been bringing on board for several months now?
Sure, happy to do that, Daryl. Essentially here on this slide, the gist of it is we've already ordered and distributed a lot of things out to schools, and we're ordering another chunk. We have ordered another chunk. Some of that's due anywhere from in a day or two to in a week or two, but all of it we're expected to be in very soon. We're trying to stay about 2 months ahead of where we believe we're going to be. We didn't want to buy, for instance, enough protective equipment for the whole rest of the year because we don't quite know where we're going to be and if we're going to be in session for the whole rest of the year. So we're trying to manage, be frugal with our spending, but still stay at least 2 months ahead in terms of the PPE. And that's what's reflected here in this chart.
Great, thank you, Bob. And I know this is something that has taken a great deal of time in terms of organizing, and even once it gets in here, again, it all comes to either the high school or central office, and we have to actually break it down and have it ready for all of the schools to pick up. In terms of instruction, our instructional goal is really to provide all students, independent of their mode of instruction, with daily high quality and effective instruction that ties back to the curriculum frameworks, and it's focused on the depths of understanding, critical thinking, creativity, and collaboration. So we really want to ensure that we're continuing to work with our students to get them to the point where they are, solid students in terms of their understanding of the curriculum, in terms of power standards, and something that the staff has been working on so diligently for the past several weeks. Supports for learning, again, so structures to support our learning. We have, one of the things that we're doing, and we've been talking about this, is, again, meeting the requirements associated with the time that students have to be in school at both the high school level and also the elementary level. And elementary is K-8. Classrooms are to be well organized, whether or not they're virtual or they're school-based. We'll have a variety of learning experiences that take place and students are not going to be on their computers continuously throughout the day. There's going to be differentiated instruction, and this goes back to what they're doing now, is, and also in terms of what's going to happen when they come back into hybrid. And then also really consistent, regular feedback to help students, really refine thinking and again, improve their performance. Bob, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the items that we brought on board?
Sure. One of our goals was to make sure that we were listening to teachers. A lot of this slide and the next one, what we ended up purchasing initially, the ideas came from teachers, and we tried to follow up and do our due diligence on what we see as being effective and also that we can afford. So essentially on this slide, these were programs that we had in place to some respect of these programs in place prior to the COVID, other than Seesaw that you see there. And we've expanded those in a variety of ways. This slide here that Daryl just clicked to, these are brand new things that we've added and have trained teachers on or are about to train teachers on. These are a variety of new applications and programs that support primarily remote learning. We wanted to really make sure that we were engaging students and providing them with ways to access the curriculum that would keep them engaged and also give them what they need. Our technology support as well, where we got the news today that we've got about 1,200 Chromebooks that are due in a day or two coming in, and that's a good challenge for us, is to try to start to get those things set up. We're in the midst of trying to finish our bus routes and setting all that up with each cohort. So our tech department's pretty knee deep in bus routes right now. But once we surface from that, we'll begin to set up these Chromebooks and get those out. Our primary goal with the new Chromebooks is to support the one-to-one initiative in grades 6, 7, and 8, and then to also restock the carts in all the schools. So we're excited about that. Some other things that we've added in here, we've increased the bandwidth across the district, and we're keeping an eye on that in case we need to increase it even further. The last thing that we want is for something that every teacher depends on and every student depends on, which is internet access, to be somehow holding up what they're trying to do with learning and with teaching. So we want to stay ahead of that, and that's a goal of ours. The last thing on this slide, though, that I really wanted to point out, and Daryl said he'd share these out to people afterwards, that link to the Tech Help Center, that's for students, that's for parents, and that's for staff. And we're committed to revising and updating that. The Ed Sub committee gave me some great ideas on how we could make that more user-friendly, and we will be looking to make some changes there.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Daily protocols and procedures. Again, all of our schools have their own reopening plans, and this actually links to all of the schools, so you can check those out individually. They were all based upon a template that we use for our district plan, but then they were individualized based upon some of the start time schedules, again, lunch times and so forth. So they're all based upon the school in which your child might go to. Your remote learning, we've been talking a lot about this. Again, they're gonna follow the same schedule as the students who are in person. We're still gonna have the daily check-ins with teachers. There's gonna be synchronous and asynchronous instruction, as well as independent learning. And again, much of what we're looking at around remote learning, it's part of our negotiation process right now. We're still in progress of that, but once that is finalized, I think we'll be able to better define this for everyone. Communication plan. One of the things we've been talking about, in our district now for several months is just the importance of robust communication from the central office down. And, as we've kind of looked at this, we've talked to families, and families are very much interested in more communication from the district and from schools. So, what we want to do is continue to do that so that we're sharing our protocols and procedures. We're talking with families and staff about issues and concerns, and we're really trying to meet the needs of all students. So some of the action steps that we've been taking, and, this is since middle of October, we had our task force meeting. So we brought our task force back together on October 14th, and Director Keenan did a great job leading that. We also established a feedback at wrsd.net email to provide really the opportunity for families to ask questions of me, of the district just in general. And we held 2 town hall events on the 21st and 22nd of October. We now have a frequently asked questions website. We also have a COVID-19 data dashboard that's now up and running. And then we had our hybrid remote survey that was completed by parents and guardians, and that was all in the month of October. So, this is our task force meeting. This goes back to the Parabola project, talking about what is the problem. And we had some really good discussions at that meeting. This is a town hall virtual meeting. That's a really bad picture of me, but that's okay. He's probably the only one that was there. But I can tell you that we had the first one that we had over 1,500 views, which was a good number of people were very much interested in what we were talking about. This is the school reopening and COVID-19 FAQ page, and Director Keenan did a great job pulling all of this together in terms of breaking this down by teaching, learning, health and safety, COVID-19 guidelines, and there's a link to that website right on our WSD.net website. And Brendan, do you want to talk a little about the dashboard?
Sure. Thanks, Daryl. So this dashboard is now up and running on the website. It's a way that we can be really open and transparent as much as is possible with the really private information about infections, to look at trends across the district by building, also by week and by month. So this is updated as frequently as we have incidents happen, so typically within the same day. And it would always happen after a notification to the school that's impacted. That's really important that goes out first to parents and staff. So the other piece we're looking at here too are cases that are traced to exposure within a school, which is a data point that we're interested in. So far, we've had none of our 5 positive cases. We haven't had any that have been the result of exposure during school or at a school building. So that is, again, something that I invite people to look at, and it'll be updated regularly as well.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. And again, we're always looking for the opportunity for, parents and schools to have communication back and forth. So again, principals have chats, they have coffees, they have newsletters, and this is all on a monthly basis. There are Simco meetings where, again, those are open to the public, and those are typically once a month. There are parent guardian conferences. And then we also encourage continued ongoing communication with teachers. In reference to the town hall meetings, we're going to continue to do those. So we'll have one on the 16th, which is this coming Monday at 5 p.m. It'll be a student forum. It'll be about 45 minutes, and we'll be putting some information out about that. Then after that, we will have a few parent forums, another probably 1 or 2 student forums. We have April and May. We still have to figure out the dates and time for those, but the other ones are already set up. And that's it for this evening, and kind of summarizes everything we wanted to talk about. So thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really helpful for myself. So again, we're going to go around the table. Please be as concise as you can possibly be. And then also please ensure that your comments are directed to the superintendent's report, as is per our agenda tonight. And so we'll go around and please keep those comments to 2 minutes and have that camera on. So first, Member Amos.
Hi, I just have a quick question that I want to make sure I understand. The governor's push for having students in person. Does the current plan, the hybrid plan, meet what he's looking for, or is he looking for everybody full in person, no hybrid?
So he's looking for, and again, so what I shared with you was guidance directly from DESE, which is coming basically from the governor's office, where they really want everyone back in person. Now, how that kind of plays out with the distancing, with busing, that's another story. the best we can do right now would be hybrid. We could not bring all students back in person. With the restrictions that are currently out there, it would be impossible.
Okay, thank you. I know everyone else has lots of questions, and I'm sure everything I can think of will get covered by.
Sorry, you're back to being first tonight. It's been a while. Remember, Ayala?
Hi. All right. So I guess the biggest question I have, because I haven't heard much about it, is on cohort C. I'm wondering basically if we have more information on how live teaching will go for cohort C when hybrid is in motion on the 18th.
Yeah, so Melissa, I kind of mentioned it in the slideshow where we talked a little bit about what the synchronous, asynchronous, might look like. Again, because we're in the midst of negotiations right now, it's a little more challenging for us to define at this specific moment. But I can tell you that we do have a pretty good plan that we already have in play in terms of our thinking process for this, and hopefully we can get everything settled pretty soon so we can get that out to everyone.
Okay, thank you for your question. Member Bennett?
Okay, so I have a couple of question-y comments, but they might not even have answers. A couple of things struck me. The governor wants to, or what was written in the presentation says that that we're supposed to prioritize in-person learning. So I'm wondering if that is, cutting down on the remote learners. So if we're not prioritizing that, we're only prioritizing in person. And if we're trying to sort of bully people into being in person in that case. And then I also have a question about how, we're not supposed to meet in groups of 10 or more in a room, and we're not supposed to have Thanksgiving, right? And that's something that he made very clear during his little speechy thing. And then but in schools, that's like a magical place where COVID doesn't exist or something. So I'm wondering what our responsibility is towards that, because it's not a magical place where people can just mingle and COVID doesn't exist. And what kind of responsibility we can take in that, and maybe not be bullied by that, because that's not it's not true. And then the map that we just looked at really has me very concerned, because you mentioned that the numbers that we've been seeing 2 weeks ago with a different map and a different thing there would have been red, but now we're yellow, and it's cool because they changed the numbers around, and that doesn't make me feel comfortable. And I don't know if that makes any of you feel comfortable, but that is ridiculous in my opinion. So any answers would be great to any of that. I don't know if there are any.
Krista, you were right on the money with your 2 minutes, and thank you for your candor. I've been thinking the same things, and I can't say them out loud. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
So Krista, those are good questions. I can tell you that yes, that map would have looked very different last week. I think one of the thoughts, so as you know, schools are excluded from many of the restrictions that they talk about. So it doesn't necessarily apply to a school. But when they're talking about social gatherings and so forth, the concern, and this is something that they're bringing back and they're looking at it nationally, is that a lot of places that are open already, the transmission doesn't necessarily happen within schools. It's happening outside of schools where people are having parties or they're hanging out or it's family gathering, whatever it is. and masks maybe aren't being worn. There's maybe a little less hand washing. What they're saying is that schools are a place where there's just pretty structured steps and protocols that are in place to keep kids and staff safe. So I think that's what they're saying. You're coming into a building, kids are washing their hands, they're wearing masks, they're socially distancing. Yet on the weekend, they might be at home playing with their friend and so forth, and there's not a lot of social distancing going on. So they're just saying if it's going to happen, it's probably going to happen outside of school. That's really kind of, now how that then gets brought in is another story.
I appreciate that. But I also want to mention, and I think that that everyone understands this if they've ever had a kid, and we're parents here. No, kids get more sick at school than they would if they were at home.
And and again, we're so concerned with safety as well. I think that's one of the big things that we're kind of looking at just in general. And again, that Friday map was new to all superintendents. No one knew that was coming until 12:30 in the afternoon. So that kind of threw everything kind of off a little bit in terms of what we're looking at, which is why we need to come back to facilities and security and look at just kind of the metrics associated with safety, because I want to ensure that we're doing this right. We're not putting kids or staff into a position where it's not safe. So
we are being bullied a little bit.
I don't know if I'm just gonna. Next question.
Next question. All right, Member Bennett, you're magically out of time, just like COVID magically only happens between the hours of 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. It's a vampire virus. All right, Member Brown, I think had to leave, so we'll go to Member Dennis.
Thank you. So, two questions. One, back in September, we passed a motion asking for a number of things. One of them was a list of things that need to happen in order for students to return to hybrid learning. I don't believe we've seen that list yet, and I think we're about a week away from students scheduled to return to hybrid learning. So I'll ask my first question, which is very simple. Are we ready? Are teachers ready? Are buildings ready? Are buses ready? And what, if anything, still needs to be done in order to satisfy all of the conditions for students to return to hybrid learning?
Sure. So when we're talking about busing, again, we have our transportation company working, as Bob mentioned, closely with Barry in the tech group, because they have to ensure that they're tapping into the Power School information correctly, and that's getting put into our software that we use to develop the routes. So all of that comes into play. So we're in a good place with that right now. In terms of the buildings, we are waiting for the ATC report, which should be in tomorrow, Wednesday at the latest. And then from there, we'll go back through, make any modifications or corrections to any equipment that needs to be fixed if the air exchange rate is not adequate. But other than that, we're in really good shape. I know principals and teachers have been doing a lot of work on prepping their classrooms, prepping bathrooms, cafeterias, having everything socially distanced in terms of the spacing. The tech, again, one of the places, again, I would say we're behind a little bit, Mike, is the tech piece. And Barry literally just told us today, oh my gosh, the 12, we're getting half of our Chromebooks in. And there, he just was notified this morning. So that would have been an area. We're still waiting for another 1,300 Chromebooks on order that will be here. And again, those are going into the hands of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders so that we can move that one-to-one program straight down to the middle school level. But those are the big things. We have our spaces for students, so that the COVID spaces, if a student is suspected of having COVID, those are all set, ready to go in all the schools. All the entryways have been marked. So again, I believe we're going to have the opportunity for some of the facility and security subcommittee members to take a couple tours of some of the schools over the next few days. So
thank you. So I think if I understand correctly, I don't think the lack of Chromebooks would keep the district from reopening to hybrid on the 18th. But do I understand that we're still waiting for reports for all but 2 buildings? And is it the case that if there is something that needs to be addressed as a result of it being identified through that report, that that is a prerequisite to opening that building?
No, because let's just say it was one classroom. If we had to, we would have to, we'd move kids if it was something that we couldn't fix by the 18th. We know all of our systems are working right now. We have Paxton Center School has, we have just has to be calibrated. So it's a matter of turning the heat on, calibrating the thermostats, and they're ready to go. So we should be fine, but we wouldn't have to keep a whole school shut unless it was an entire system that went down.
So it sounds like all of the conditions for reopening for hybrid learning or return to hybrid learning are satisfied or plan to be satisfied by the 18th. So that's good to hear. My second question is, you showed us in your communication plan that there are a number of forums for parents and for students. I just would encourage and ask that the administration consider sometime soon, sooner rather than later, including the third leg of that stool, which are teachers, and putting forward an opportunity for teachers to ask any kind of clarifying questions that they need in this process. Communications that I think we received seems to indicate that they need it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Member Dennis. We're going to move to Member Gustafson.
Okay. I had a couple questions about things later in the agenda, so I'll save those that were in the report, but I'll save those, like the goals. So I think those are later. So my couple questions about things that Daryl just talked about. The first is the forms. I'm very happy to see those. I would encourage those to be, do you need to do that first? I can wait. Okay. I'd encourage those to be at some point interactive, because some of the feedback I've heard is that the forums that happened in October were not really interactive. They were town hall meetings, but they were actually submitting questions and then you doing a presentation, and people were wanting an opportunity to have some dialogue, or at least in real time exchange of questions and answers. So I would encourage the district to be creative in finding a way to do that at some point. I think that's important.
Yeah, I can tell you, we're looking at a way to do that. You can't do it with Google Meets. So,
I know it's very challenging, but if Worcester can find a way to do it with their district, I hope we can figure it out.
Well, Worcester's paying money for their Zoom.
Yeah, I'm not upset. I hope we can figure it out.
So it's a little different, but yes, I hear what you're saying.
Even if it's a login, reserve your time to answer a question, then exit, something like that to meet our capacity limits. I just think that would be really helpful. And I'm sure we can figure it out. You guys are very smart at doing that. Second question or comment is about the Deci metrics. I know we were talking about that. I know that's partially out of our hands, but my thoughts on that are also reminding everyone that in the spring, Deci also did not close schools and the governor did not close schools until every superintendent in the state closed schools on their own. So I would hope or be curious to hear what conversations the superintendents will be having around this. Most of the data, I read their lengthy discussion, most of the data they cite is based on countries and communities where the spread was under more control than we're having here. A lot of them are international studies where the community spread is very much a lower level. I have personal friends right now that have COVID that they got in a school under remote learning because it just is in their community and it spread through the school. So those are my couple.
We're short on time for your comment. If you want to quickly wrap up, because we also need a motion and you're over the 2 minutes.
I'm sorry. Yes. Those were my main comments on that. I did have a quick question about the enrollment report, but I don't know if we'll get to that. I will share the question that I didn't know if the public school category, what that included, and I hope we'll get some clarification on that down the road, but I know that doesn't have to be this moment.
Thank you. Member Young, did you have were you in my chat for a hand raised? Oh, Member Otmar, got you guys confused. You guys are, you're usually on top of things.
So in Adam's stead, I'd put a motion to extend our meeting to 10:30.
I'll second that.
Nice, thank you, gentlemen. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none. Member Amos.
Amos, yes.
Ayala.
Ayala, yes.
Bennett.
Bennett, yes.
Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Gustafson.
Gustafson, yes.
Haber.
Haber, yes.
Imber.
Imber, yes.
Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
LaVoy. Matt, are you with us? I'll pass that over for now. Member Longbeliel.
Megan, Matt
yes.
left the meeting. Matt left the
Thank you.
meeting.
Longbeliel, yes.
Mitchell.
Mitchell, yes.
Otmar.
Otmar, yes.
Shapiro.
Shapiro, yes.
Silva. Asima. Skip her for now. Smith.
Smith, yes.
Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Young.
Young, yes.
Yes, we are extended to 10:30.
Silva, yes. Sorry about that, Megan.
Thanks, Asima. I appreciate it. We're going to move on to Member Haber, please.
Hi. My biggest concern right now, beyond the plan, which I know is in the works, is a possible disparity of numbers. I mean, we encouraged people, if you really didn't know what you wanted to do, choose remote and choose hybrid, and then you can switch to remote if you need to. I'm worried that we're making these plans, we're setting our cohorts, we're getting our bus routes ready, and with the possibility that these numbers could really shift once our hybrid and remote plans come out. And I just hope that we're preparing for that in some way. I'm hoping that buses aren't going to end up with 10 kids on them, and then we needed more buses, and that we're ready to shift gears if need be. Another concern is that I've been hearing from a lot of teachers about their Wednesday PD days, so many of them being self-led, that they're feeling like they're looking for things that they're interested in and spending their time on YouTube trying to figure out how to use the new programs. I'm hoping that we can shift some of those to a more district-led or even building-led based on what we're finding is needed once we move to hybrid. I'm happy to see that our FAQ page is up and running from the task force. I am afraid that it's not being updated with current information. Just one question I happened to look at didn't have up-to-date information. So I'd like to make sure that happens. And my biggest takeaway from everything is if we can really work on consistency back to middle school schedules. We have some kids who are going every day, full day right now. We have other kids that are half day in Holden, and we have kids in Princeton who are not all 5 days, is what I understand. I don't understand what is going on there, but I'm hoping that district-wide we're consistent in terms of that, in terms of our COVID response.
The time is up for now.
Okay.
Administration, is there any response to consistency, or I believe she asked about the FAQ?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at the FAQ. Will update. Thank you for pointing that out, Sherry. But also the consistency piece is really important as we move into this hybrid model. So we're looking to do that as best we can.
Member Ember?
So I'm hoping as a new business item that at our next meeting, Daryl, you and administration can address any potential needs for support services that are increased. And particular areas, I'd be looking at are for sure technology, and then secondarily custodial and maybe paraprofessionals in terms of being able to escort kids around the schools if we need to, and other support services of cleaning and those sorts of things. So, I just want to know that you have the support that you need, or really the district has the support it needs. And my guess is that things are just very thin right now, and not going to get better. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Imber. Member Kirschenbaum?
Thank you. I want to echo Member Imber's comments about the needs, staffing needs that might be needed, tech around instructional specialists, curriculum specialists, and so forth. I think that given the number of technology and apps and new resources that are available to teachers, there's going to be some need there. Also, I would really like some greater clarity on the state's hours, mandated hours for the year. Elementary, middle school requires 850 hours of instructional time, breaks down to about 5 hours of instructional time per day. High school requires 935. That's about 5.5 hours per day. I know we are running very tight on that now, given our remote model, given the number of transitions, masks, breaks, early releases so that kids can get on buses and so on and so forth. I'm afraid we're going to be cutting too close into that, and the potential for issues that result from that. So I'd really like to see some greater clarity on how those hours are going to be met, given this new hybrid, and especially for that cohort C. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to put that time on learning request informally. Member Kirschenbaum, is that okay with you?
Yes, I would like to. I've asked this a number of times, so I'd like it to actually be responded to. Thank you.
As we've done in the past, I'm going to put that in our formal request for information. So again, if members, if something comes to you tonight that you didn't get to ask, but you'd like it in a formal request, please do send that to me by Friday, and I'll send those requests in on Friday. Member Lavoie has left us. Member Longbeliel.
Thank you. The emails and calls I've gotten from members of our communities indicate that our communities are split between those who think that we should remain remote and those who feel strongly we should move to hybrid plus remote. We've given families the opportunity to choose between those two, and a substantial majority have chosen hybrid. So I think it's reasonable to give people that chance. Although I certainly do have concerns about the spread of the virus, I'm also hearing a lot about pretty significant difficulties that kids are having because they are currently only remote. Mental health problems, serious mental health problems that they didn't have before we went all remote, and children being uncomfortable speaking up in class when which for them is not a typical behavior. So I do think it is important to continue to give people those options. I don't recall getting any emails or calls asking that we go to full in-person learning. And so I think I feel very strongly we should hold the line. And hybrid is the most in school that time that children should be spending, especially since the virus is expanding at this point. I do have a question that I haven't heard answered yet, which is that I know that our policy is that if a kid or a teacher is diagnosed as positive, that anyone within 6 feet, any close contacts will be asked to quarantine, as I understand it. But how does that work at the classroom level? Would it be only kids within 6 feet of that kid or that teacher? Would it be the entire classroom? Can you please explain
Sure.
that a little bit more?
Sure.
Thank
So that's why we have students spaced out, that, within a certain amount of space around another student. So it's within 6 feet for 15 minutes, and it's 15 minutes cumulative over 24 hours. So you wouldn't necessarily close an entire class if you had a student that tested positive and you had a student that was on, that was 10 feet away. But I can tell you that even in a place where if you're within 6 feet, but you're wearing a mask, they're wearing a mask, there's a divider between them, that's still considered within 6 feet. And the Board of Health will say, well, you know what, you were within 6 feet, you're a close contact. So, for the most part, though, when the initial guidance came out, Linda, you're correct. It did say that it said whole classroom just gets shut down, and then they modified the guidance.
So it would be some children within the classroom who were within 6 feet of that kid who was affected. Is that right?
Yes.
And if a teacher's affected, is it just the front row of kids, or how does that work?
It's all based upon the spacing. So what happens is the Board of Health goes through and they do the close contact verification, and they make that determination.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you so much. Member Heber, we'll circle back to you after everybody's had a chance to speak. Member Mitchell?
Thank you. Two hopefully quick questions. The first is I don't think I've seen anything as it relates to the, I guess, sick policy, sick days. What are the guidelines that we have to work with, i.e. if you're quarantined because you were with someone that had COVID or no? So I'm not sure what considers a day off versus a quarantine versus where does that all flow as it relates to days in school. Then I guess so that's question one. The second question is as it relates to holding that hour of time for remote students at the end of the day. Whose responsibility is it to kind of hold that hour? Because I think I think it's going to be really key to either the kids that are remote or the kids that are remote for those 2 days, that the teacher is able to get online and be able to help them. I mean, I've seen dismissals from K through 12. The younger kids, it takes a lot in a normal situation, let alone a situation where we're going to be releasing one kid at a time out of a class or 12 kids for a bus. I mean, I can imagine that dismissal could run 45 minutes. So how is the district, and whether that's a school thing, a district, going to make sure that that time that is actually really held sacred for those kids that are learning remote? Okay, those are the two.
So, in reference to that time at the end of the day, I think one of the things principals have been doing diligently over the past several weeks is looking at their staffing and how they can best, bring kids into the building and then have kids exit the building while socially distancing all the students, getting them onto the bus into their correct seats because they're all, remember, I mean, that's, and again, other schools are doing this. They've been doing this for a little while now. So it's not like this isn't happening in other places. It's happening in a lot of places. But that is going to, hit some of those areas. In some form or fashion, we're going to have to, as time kind of goes on. And this is one of the things that I said to principals last week. The first 3, 4, 5 weeks, it's going to be tough. This is going to be challenging getting the kids back in. It's going to take a lot of time. It's not going to look quite the same. But at the same time, I have talked to other superintendents in other districts, and they're like, yeah, hey, listen, when we transitioned, we thought it was going to take, kids were they got into it pretty fast. So once the kids are into it and they're used to it and we can get them moving, it'll be a little slower maybe at the K1-2 level. But by the time at the high school, they're gonna be into it within a day or two. So that, again, that my hope is that ends up being compressed so we have more time for the teachers to work with those kids. And then your first question, Ben, was around, I'm sorry.
The question was around, I guess, sick days.
Okay.
Right?
Yep. Good. Yes. So if it's a quarantine situation, a kid's just going to be remote. So we're not going to say that they'll just jump into remote learning. They're not going to be, they won't be considered sick. If the student's sick, and they're not participating in anything, then it'll qualify as a sick day.
Okay, and if someone does get COVID and things like that, there will be extenuating circumstances that they won't end up, let's 14 days, 20 days, they won't end up having to repeat something.
No. We're going to be careful. We'll be careful about that. The one thing we have to also, again, the state's is really holding everybody's feet to the fire concerning attendance, just like they are MCAS, just like they are everything else. So they're kind of trying to treat this year as a normal year as much as humanly possible. And we'll just see where that goes. Because again, I think a lot of people are going to run into these situations, especially as flu season kicks in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Mitchell. Member Otmar, please.
All right, so I have just one question for administration tonight, and it is in regards to attachment 5. Now, for my colleagues that don't have attachment 5 right at hand, that is in regards to class sizes. Specifically, I'm going to hone in on 4th grade. So if we take a look at Houghton Elementary School, we'll see that in the 4th grade, they have 49 students. At Paxton, we have 52. However, I would like to have administration explain why they chose to take the 49 students at Houghton and divide them into 3 classrooms of a very manageable 16, 16, and 17, whereas they chose to take the 52 at Paxton and pack them into 2 classes of 26. Thank you.
So it's not as easy as saying, well, we decided to keep 3 teachers there and 2 teachers here. Some of that, Carl, comes down to the numbers of students who were actually at Houghton School. So if you had many students that left, because we would not have been in a situation where, 5-6 months ago, or even more than that, when we were actually putting everything together in reference to class sizes and staffing, because the staffing is all done pre now. So that's how it would have played out. When we're looking at, grade 4, those numbers are based upon the numbers associated with kids that we're now currently seeing. So again, that's why that number looks like that.
So to clarify, it was based on last year's enrollment, and it's
Right.
the short end of the stick this year.
So when we look when we're looking at these, in particular, planning out for next year. So the budget that was proposed to you had staff based upon the projections associated with enrollment that we would have for this year. So that's how that kind of played out.
I didn't have any other questions. That was my only one.
And Megan, you're showing up twice.
We can't get enough of her.
Oh, that was bad, Laura.
Yeah, well, it's late.
It's late. Yeah.
I don't have the alphabet of people here, so whoever thinks is the next one, go ahead. Is there anybody who hasn't gone who would like to go?
I think I'm next. I think I'm usually after O.
Go for it.
Shapiro. Is that true?
Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go.
So I think usually you're before me.
Okay, good. All right. So I'll go just a quick. I just want to go kind of support and reiterate what Member Bennett said kind of at the beginning about the coding of the towns and the colors of the towns and everything like that. I think that as a committee, when we talked about all sorts of different metrics and all sorts of different expectations, we were looking at a coding that existed before Friday. And I think a lot of parents made decisions based on whether or not to send their child to school hybrid or keep them home based on a coding that existed before Friday. And so I would like to encourage the administration to whatever point we can, and as a committee, to consider that we hold to the coding of the towns and the colors of the towns that existed before Friday, because I don't believe in the magical change that happened. So I think that would only be fair to the parents and the information that we were given prior to, I keep saying Friday, but that's kind of where I want to kind of, stress and have everyone think about, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have Member Silva up next.
Look at you, Mike. You got it.
Hey, ever. I'm glad you're back.
Basically, I'm going to keep mine short because a lot of my concerns have already been voiced, but just wanted to stress that I really would like to see details on the remote versus hybrid. So I know we all voted as parents sending out in October, but with numbers changing and with how the schedules might have changed for some students, I really want to know more details going forward, and really hoping that honestly that, whatever is best for all our students and families is what's been decided and what will happen.
Thank you, Member Silva. We'll move on to Member Smith, please.
Okay, thank you. So Daryl, thank you for your presentation and your team for us. And I understand mine's not really a question, it's more of commentary. I understand the commissioner's desire for fully in-person learning. I too would like for life to be normal in the way that it was a year ago. The sheer irresponsibility in schools to be fully in person is followed in the Deci guidance, if you look carefully, by the word if feasible, right? And something that you sort of mentioned with the spacing and how we probably can't really get everyone in person and transportation. As it is, we as a district are not promising our community 6 feet of distance for their children. We're somewhere between 3 and 6 feet, depending. The assumption that schools are protected from this disease, as many have mentioned, is a fallacy. Some of the early data suggests schools are not places of transmission, and this is due in major part to mitigation strategies, which include mask wearing, sanitizing, and physical distancing of 6 feet or greater. We cannot be held hostage by a commissioner of education and a governor who are butting into our local school system. Our district is in this committee's hand and not in the governor or Commissioner Riley's. And the threat of an audit is not really a threat. Audit us, come in, tell us what we need. I welcome that. I think we all would. Give us some help if they have that kind of personnel, which I highly doubt, as I've been trying to get an issue resolved for over a month that they haven't taken care of. So, but bring the audit on. Dr. McCall and Deputy Superintendent Burlow, let's hold, and everyone in our district leadership, let's hold our ground with what is best and safest for our community. And I suggest that when we open in the hybrid model, that we invite Commissioner Riley to come and visit us. It's been 2 years since he's been in our district. Come on over, come visit us for a day or two, and he can sit in the front row of that classroom that Linda was mentioning, that has the 3 feet of distancing with that teacher, and see what our teachers do, see what a classroom is like in hybrid learning.
Sorry, Member Smith, you're so passionate, but you are over your time.
I'm done. That was it. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Your words are heard very, very close to my heart. Member Williamson, please.
I just wanted to maybe make a recommendation for the facilities committee. I know you said that they were going to be considering protocols for closing and things like that. I think it's worth considering staffing as a factor that might require a school to go remote. I know as a building principal, that's one of those things that I panic about is, what if I have 8 teachers that suddenly have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and I can't cover that within, the building. That's a real concern. And I think, I feel like that should fall under that feasibility, consideration. And then I just had a question. Have they given you any definition of what the evidence for school transmission would be?
So that would get defined through the Board of Health.
Okay.
So if they were to say that, again, it didn't happen at home, they got it from, a student had it in school, their friend who was next to them ended up getting it as well, that would be considered in-school transmission. So that does happen. To go to your first point, I'm also concerned about, as are the building principals, staffing. There have been schools in the state who have not been able to open. They've had to actually go remote for a day or close for a day or two if they have too many teachers out. I met with principals Thursday morning for 3 hours, and we kind of went through just an enormous amount of kind of information around what we might do in these types of situations. But I did tell them that they could get a full-time substitute, at least one to start off with, in their building at all time. So high school level, I think 3. I think that's what I told Principal Biendo. But just to help cover with things, because the other thing that people have to realize is you have a building principal and an assistant principal in most schools. Some schools only have a principal and a half. Niquag and Glenwood share an assistant principal. So if Dixie or Karen, if those 2 principals are out and we're trying to cover, well, then I'm saying, hey, Brendan, can you go help out over there? I mean, that's how thin we are as a district. So we need to get more bodies into the schools to help deal with the things. As Carl said, hey, what's going to happen? How are we going to get the kids out? Because I want to assure that time is set aside for students, who are remote that day, B or C. So again, those are things that we're putting forward. I can tell you that it's really hard to get people to sub. In the same way we talked about busing with our bus company, even the coordinator has to drive a bus this year because they do not have enough bus drivers.
That was all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Williamson. Member Woodland, please.
Hi, so I would like to echo what the past several committee members have said about to please reject the governor and Deci's threats and don't let them belittle the amazing feats that our remote learning model has achieved. Our teachers have created a lot of great learning opportunities. There's been a lot of engagement. This is a legitimate way of teaching our students. And I encourage you, don't let the governor and Deci take that away from us. Our district created this for our students. It's not perfect, but nothing is. It is still a legitimate way to be teaching our students. And just don't give in to the doublethink that they're asking our school districts to do by saying you can only have 10 people unless it's a classroom. I understand this whole idea that a classroom is going to be more vigilant, but the data is not lining up the way they want it to, and no amount of repeating is going to fix that. So that's my soapbox, but I do have a question. In terms of those spaces, and I've asked this in facilities in some regards, but I'd like another follow-up. Those classrooms that cannot maintain 6 feet of distance, you said that that's about roughly 15% of the classrooms. What is the extra mitigation for those classrooms? Because if you're taking away that distance protection, there needs to be something else as a moral obligation to our staff and our students. And so that's what I would love to learn. Thank you.
So that is, again, a very good question. At the kindergarten level, where you have the opportunity for kids to sit at tables, so where you have the 6-sided tables, the hex tables that we have, and they're divided into. We actually are putting in the acrylic dividers to help space, even if the kids are within 6 feet, they'll have a divider between them. So I know that's happening in certain schools. The place where it's the most, I guess, the most consistent in terms of not getting that 6 foot spacing is really the high school. That's the place where it's the most challenging. And again, I guess the number one mitigation strategy is making sure that the students are wearing their masks all the time. And again, that's something that if there was a way for us to put barriers in between and so forth, I'm not even sure how that might happen, because even if you're at a 3 foot level, Linda, or a 5 foot level, or whatever it might be, you're under the 6 foot level. Even with the because I've seen the acrylic ones that sit on desks. Well, unless you're like in the desk like this the entire time, as soon as you sit back, you're kind of in the same spot, even with your mask on. So that's a more challenging thing for us to deal with. I hear what you're saying.
Dr. McCall, I believe there's a point of order.
Yeah. To extend the meeting until 11.
Thank you. There's a motion. And
Sorry, I didn't say a motion. You couldn't hear me. Sorry.
Okay, I gotcha. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion on the floor? Okay, seeing none. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, no.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Imber, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, no.
Member Longbelier?
Longbelier, yes.
Member Mitchell? Ben has left us. Member Otmar?
Otmar with regrets, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, no.
Member Smith?
Smith, no.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes, at least till we get to the policy.
I know there's some really important policies in there. And the chair votes yes. We will continue. Thank you, Member Woodland. Member Young, it's your turn to go to the superintendent's report if you wish.
Sure. Actually, the last several people, I can't even keep count, pretty much hit on it. That my only comments really that chasing a moving target is a fool's errand. I think everybody's kind of made the point that, let's do what this administration, this committee decides. Deci set guidance a while ago. The state wants to keep changing stuff. Let them keep changing it. Let's keep moving forward with what we have. And just keep making smart, fact-based decisions. Lean on the other superintendents, Dr. McCall, and that are already going through this, and learn from the people around us. And that's really it. There's other little things, but that's the only thing I think for tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Young. That concludes our discussion of the superintendent's report. Next on the agenda tonight are recommendations requiring action by the school committee. There's a motion on the floor to authorize the school committee to appoint Fletcher, Tilton, and Nuttall and McAvoy and Joyce PC as legal counsel for the period of July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Member Brown had to step out for a moment, or step out for the night. I'm sorry. I am also very tired and trying to keep it coherent. In legal, we did approve this as a subcommittee. These are two of the councils that we're wishing to hire for the year. One of the councils is Attorney Bertulis. The other council is regarding special education. As you guys know, Attorney Stoneberg is seeking to retire, but was going to stick with us through the completion of our MOUs. I believe she's sticking with us much longer than she had hoped to stick with us, and is very much looking forward to some time with her grandchildren. So we will be seeking a third attorney for the district, but we will be doing different sorts of interviews and that sort of thing moving forward with legal in the next couple months. So that's the overview. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala? Melissa's still with us? Am I dropped off?
Sorry, it's my mute. Yes.
Okay. Member Bennett?
Yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Imber, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Longbelial?
Longbelial, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
And Member Young?
Young, yes.
Next on our agenda tonight is unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business on our agenda. Next is the secretary's report and the approval of a number of minutes. I'm going to pass over these items on the agenda and get to them at our next meeting. Next on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Please direct any questions you have to Director Deci. Next are committee reports. I'll speak for management. We met recently and we had the pleasure of really getting to know our new consultant for the district, Dr. Mary Mead Montague, who was in on our meeting that evening. We did spend the majority of our meeting talking about reopening plans with the consultant and Dr. McCall. We had to pass over items of our agenda, which is going over the 1000 series of our school committee policies to update them. That will be the foci of our next meeting, which will be next week. And if you have any questions for management, please let me know. Next on the agenda is Ed Sub. Chair Smith, can you give a very brief update?
Yes, we met tonight. We didn't go over what was on our agenda. We put that off till next Monday unless we have a special meeting in which we'll adjust our time. We discussed the presentation, some pieces of the presentation that Dr. McCall shared with us, educational components of that.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is business finance. Member Dennis, can you give us a brief synopsis? And I believe we might have just enough time to go over your policy if you wish, or we can put that off to another meeting.
Sure. No, either way is fine with me. In terms of our business finance meeting, we reviewed the fiscal year close for 2020. We reviewed various components of the fiscal year 21 budget. I think it's important to say that it appears as though all but for the unknown of what our transportation reimbursement will be, and we know it will be less because we spent less, that our funding would appear to be on par with what we've budgeted for fiscal year 21. That is, the towns have passed the budget. And while different portions of state funding, some might come in less, some might come in higher, are basically netting out. So that's an important piece of information. One of the things that we're trying to get to, we still have not gotten to, an understanding of what our revised budget number is based on all of these different changes, and both in terms of revenue and in terms of expenses. And we've asked the administration to come back and bring that forward to us as we have several times previously. We are very close now to the planning to commence for the fiscal year 2022 budget. Typically, these are discussions that we start having in January and towns to vote as early as April. Which is only 3 to 5 months away. One of the points of emphasis that we gave was to bring forward an opportunity for the school committee members, this body, to opine on priorities before the budget is developed. So given the timeline that they've shared with us, at least preliminarily, I think that we can expect that to happen within the next month or two in order to fit into the overall timeline. Our next meeting is about a week prior to the next school committee meeting at the end of this month, and we'll take it up from there.
Thank you, Member Dennis. If you don't mind, let's pass over your policy and get to that next meeting. as we do have a couple more policies that have to go over in the next couple. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my words. Committee reports. Thank you. Legal. Chair Brown has stepped away. Member Otmar, is there anything you need to add other than what we've spoken about this evening?
I mean, briefly, as we've already talked about, the negotiating with paraprofessionals, also working on with AA transportation, van pool, and then also in regards to the turf field. So those are kind of the three ongoing things that we have. And our next meeting is going to be next Thursday.
Thank you. I'm going to just take one thing out of order in case we don't get another motion to extend that I hope we will. I'm going to go to facilities next. Chair Young, can you briefly explain the amended policy?
Sure. Let me do a 30-second report and then I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
We met last week. We addressed this policy that I'm going to make a motion to in just a minute. Then we also discussed some of the HVAC stuff, and members of the subcommittee will be looking to tour some buildings within the district at the end of this week. And then we will have another meeting on Monday where we will go over those tours and also discuss the upcoming HVAC report so that we can do it before reopening. I'd like to make a motion to make a motion for the first reading of amended policy 6612.3, policy relating to pupil services, face coverings, waiving that reading. And after I get a second, I'd like to just discuss what we changed and why.
Great.
Second.
Go ahead, Member Young.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm just going to try to present this so that everybody understands what we're doing. Let me know if you see it.
I do.
Okay, so the first thing we did was we deleted the exempting this policy for students in below grade 1. Basically, it applies, by changing this policy, it applies to everybody in the building all the time. You know, there's discussion around it. You know, we understand the younger students in ECC, kindergarten, grade 1, wearing a mask all the time, 100%, may not be the easiest thing, but the expectation is that we teach them and can make that happen. So, you know, through this statement down here that, you know, the building principal ultimately has the overall approval of who needs to wear it, when and how. That is basically looking to the building principals to, again, enforce that all students will wear the masks, but understanding that the younger students, it's more of an education issue and less of a disciplinary issue, especially at the beginning. Whereas, you know, you're looking at older students, if they're refusing to wear a mask, you know, that's nice, come back later. And that's me speaking, not the committee, for that last little bit. The other thing we did was just rewording this. We got rid of, it was kind of clumsy wording. It just said that when following Deci guidelines for social distancing, masks may not be required under these specific scenarios. And again, you know, it's not saying that all the time during those scenarios, such as PE, but if you're able to follow the Deci guidelines for the distancing during PE as laid out, then there may be a situation like if you're outside, everybody's 10 feet apart, whatever it is, you may not need to wear a mask. But, you know, inside, you're closed, definitely you need to, even if you're in PE. You know, we just laid out specifically the district is responsible for providing masks and face coverings for staff. And also, it was, again, awkward wording that staff members are responsible for arriving at the building wearing the face coverings that are provided by the district. So even if it's given to you in school, you need to bring it home, bring it back in, and put it on before you enter the building. That was the only changes. And again, the big one is adding the students below second grade. And that's it. I'm open to questions.
Member Smith?
I just have a question about the part that says students may not have to wear a mask under the certain circumstances. With the governor's recent Friday announcement that, or earlier in the week, he had actually announced it, but the requirement that we wear masks in public, even when we can physically distance, I feel like that takes precedent over the Deci guidelines. I'm also concerned about something like this, when it says while outside, that kids at the high school may think it's okay, because this happened at my high school, to not wear masks while they're in the parking lot and they congregate together. And it's just very upsetting to see, because of all the mitigation strategies you have going on in the building and then out in the parking lot. It's like, what are we doing as a community? So that would be something I would ask. I know this is our second reading of this, but I don't know if we need to look at that again based on the recent order.
So, am I on mute? No, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
This is the first reading of the amendment. So we.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if there is something you'd like to change, we could entertain that with a motion.
Oh, it's so late for a motion. I don't know how to do that. Let's see.
I know.
I mean, I just kind of my amendment might be to strike the whole section, but I don't know. That would be my easy way out. Someone else who has a better idea or who may be thinking like me can make an offer.
I would believe Member Smith. I wouldn't strike the whole section because you don't need to wear it during your mask break or when you're eating or drinking. I would think you are more in line with trying to get rid of the last bullet, especially the one outside, and perhaps the bullet above it. But I don't know if there's exceptions. I think the exception when phys ed was when they're outside. But if we're saying you need it when you're outside, you can just say you need to wear it.
So just to jump in, I actually support getting rid of the bottom one. But just depending on what we're doing, again, this is how far down we flow this. Building principals know what they need to do. The physical education teachers know what they need to do. I do see that having students outside when they're unsupervised, okay, let's get rid of that. That's not an option. If you're on school property and you're near each other, yeah, you shouldn't be wearing a mask. I mean, you should be wearing a mask. Right.
I would say even during, I'm just thinking about, just for the committee, I'm thinking of the MIAA guidelines, and they require mask wearing with the kids playing sports. And I think that when Deci made their guidelines that you're referencing, they're from July, before the MIAA came out with their guidelines. So we're requiring kids in sports to wear masks. I actually would I'll make this amendment and we can see if it goes. The amendment would be to strike the last two bullets of during physical ed and while outside. That would be my
So Member Smith is proposing the amendment to strike the final two bullets in that paragraph. It has been seconded by Member Imber. So I believe Member Dennis was first in line to have a question on this.
Yeah, well, I had my hand raised before the amendment was made, but I don't know if Christine's the maker of the amendment, so if she has some comments on the motion or on the amendment, she should probably talk to him first, and I'd be happy to talk after that.
Christina, do you think you've spoken on your amendment, or do you have more to add?
I think people probably understand it, but thank you, Mike. I think I'm good.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't see it as a necessary change, because the bolded language at the front of it talks about masks may not be required under these specific scenarios, and I think that that language is loose enough. If the issue here is that are we in conflict with the latest advisory from the governor, I don't see this the way that it reads as being in conflict, and so I would be fine with it, and I think it's I guess I'll just leave it at that. I'm fine with it the way that it is.
Thank you, Member Dennis. I have Member Woodland and then Member Haber.
So I just wanted to point out that actually what Member Dennis said about it's may not required. I know offhand that the physical education classes, it's only students can only take off masks if they are outside and 10 feet apart. And I'm not as familiar with the MIA. I don't even know if I got that acronym right. Sorry. I'm not as familiar with their guidance. Are they ever 10 feet apart and requiring masks? And if not, then I think then this still creates that flexibility. You know, it's part of why we didn't put in a definition of what a mask is exactly, like and we're leaving that to student handbooks because we don't want to keep this too rigid for what the future may hold. And so I'm hoping that may does a good amount of work. I mean, others are free to disagree and go where they like, but I think that this gives the building principals and the superintendent wiggle room for how they're going to enact this plan. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. We have Member Haber, please.
I think that the may not be required really covers it, and I think we should leave it as is. But I will say that if we are going to take off those last 2 items, then I think that it needs to say masks are not required, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. Mask breaks and eating and drinking are 2 times where you certainly could not be wearing a mask. So it shouldn't say may anymore if that's the amended language.
Thank you. Member Young?
So I think just to speak to it, I definitely agree with Member Dennis, Member Woodland, Member Haber. The intent of this policy is not just a short-term policy, but longer guidance. If we want to see this or anything similar to it again, we have something on the books that we can address. And it also provides that the policy of the school committee, while still allowing the administration and building administration to, enact regulations that meet this policy and possibly even stricter, but they can't go beyond this. They can't say, oh, well, you can use it all these other times. Like, we lay out these 4 times where it may not be required, and that's it. So I think this gets the intent of the committee across, and this discussion does too. That we definitely want people wearing masks as much as possible whenever they can. There may be a few situations where they're allowed not to. If they're on a mask break outside, whatever it is, that's it. So,
thank you, Member Bennett.
I'd like to suggest that we combine the last 2 bullet points. During physical education class that is outside.
Member Bennett, so that would be a different amendment. So we have to speak to the amendment that Member Smith has made on the floor. If you'd like, you can make a motion to amend the amendment if you wish.
I would like to make a motion to amend the amendment then.
Okay, so the current amendment on the floor is to strike the last 2 bullet points. You would like to amend the motion on the floor to state during physical education classes while outside, which would in theory only be striking the last bullet point.
Right, and making it more specific for the second to last bullet point.
Okay, so you're making a motion to amend the amendment on the floor. Is there a second? Not seeing one, I'm sorry. All right, so we go back to the motion on the floor, which is the amendment to strike the last 2 bullet points. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Again, you're not voting on the policy, you're voting on the amendment. So you're voting on Member Smith's amendment. Member Amos had to log off. Member Ayala. I can't see you all because we're screen sharing, so if you're not here.
Sorry.
Yep, it's okay.
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett.
And that is, we're voting to remove them?
Correct.
Yes.
Member Brown is not here. Member Dennis.
Dennis, no.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, no.
Member Haber.
Haber, no.
Member Kirschenbaum. Oh, sorry. Member Imber and then Kirschenbaum.
Imber, yes.
Imber, yes. Kirschenbaum.
I forget what I just voted. Hold on. Voting, yes.
Okay. Member Longbeliel.
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mitchell's not with us. Member Otmar.
Otmar, no.
Member Shapiro.
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva.
Silva, yes.
Member Smith.
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, no.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, no.
Member Young.
Young, no.
Chair is going to vote no. Madam Secretary, can I get a tally on that? I know we're close.
Give me 1 second, Megan.
Thank you. Take your time.
It appears to be tied 8-8.
Okay, so we have a tie on the amendment. This is my first tie. Madam Secretary, do you have, what do we do in the case of a tie?
I don't know.
So, Megan, I would suggest that if it does not pass by a majority vote, that it.
That's correct. It does not pass by a majority vote. Yes, thank you, Member Dennis. You are my voice of reason in my exhaustion. So the amendment then fails. We go back to the original motion on the floor, which is passing the first reading of Adam's motion, a facilities motion. Do we have any other discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing no hands, so now we are voting on the policy itself. Member Ayala.
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett.
Yes.
Member Member Dennis.
Dennis, yeah.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber.
Haber, yes.
Member Imber.
Imber, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Longbeliel.
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mitchell. Nope. Member Otmar.
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro.
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva.
Silva, yes.
Member Smith.
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
The chair votes yes, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Member Young.
Thank you.
We would need a motion to extend at this point. I did promise, or not promise, hope to give the floor to the Diversity Committee as well, if possible.
I move that we extend the meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We're going to go, any discussion to the motion to extend?
Megan, I just put in the comment that we need to talk about the goals.
Yep, yep. We've got probably at least another half hour ahead of us, my friends. If we can, it's important. We can sleep tomorrow night. Hopefully. Member Ayala.
Ayala, very hesitant. Yes.
I will try to deliver Dunkin' Donuts to the world tomorrow. Member Bennett.
Wait, you're bringing us Dunkin' Donuts?
I
Then
just
yes.
If I knew that worked, 3 years ago, I'd be asking for those.
energy with just the mention of a coffee. All right, here we go. Before we all go cuckoo. All right, Member Dennis.
Dennis, no.
Member Gustafson. Member
Gustafson,
Haber.
yes.
Haber, yes.
Member Imber.
Ember, no.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Longbelil.
Longbelil, yes.
Member Otmar.
Otmar, no.
Member Shapiro.
Yeah, yes, Shapiro, yes.
How do you like your coffee?
Thank you.
Member Silva.
As I'm yawning, I'm saying yes.
Member Smith.
Smith, no.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland.
I'm conflicted because this could have been 2 meetings, I think, but I'll do yes.
Member Young.
Through a warped sense of civic duty, yes.
The chair votes yes, and I would like to thank our student reps for staying on with us as well. You guys are exempt for any homework you have not yet done today. Next on our agenda, we're going to go to diversity next. Chair Silva.
We would like to have that for a reading for the, I believe it was a diversity appreciation policy, if I remember the title correctly.
Correct.
And it's a very simple read.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's
No,
a very simple read. Very we spent a lot of time. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't have the agenda out because I have
I'm
this
just trying to
screen
grab
open.
it and share my screen.
Yep, that would be good.
So you can speak to it and I will pull it up.
Very simple read. Our committee spent a lot of time discussing, to be honest, practically every phrase and word, and made sure that it covered a lot of different aspects in terms of inclusion and diversity and all different types of diversity. So hopefully you guys will appreciate all our hard work on this. And like I said, it's a very simple read.
Thank you. And
Just a point of order, we need a second.
there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I second.
I will second.
Wonderful, thank you. Hold on one moment. I'm trying to find it in all of the attachments. All right. Not seeing me find it quickly to bring it up. I believe Member Silva spoke to it well, and you guys have it in your attachments. Are there any questions or comments to the appreciation of diversity policy? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Dennis?
I think he's gone.
Okay.
He left.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Imber?
Ember, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Longbelil?
Longbelil, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
All right, and the motion passes. Next on our agenda tonight, we're going to move backwards to the Superintendent's Goals and Evaluation Committee to speak on the goals of the superintendent. So our chair isn't here. Would our vice chair like to take over that discussion?
Sure, thank you, Megan. On behalf of the Superintendent Goals and Evaluation Subcommittee, we recommend that the full committee approve the 2020-2021 goals you have in your report. So I'm making the motion, right, first? So I've made the motion.
Second.
So the motion has been made. Is there a second?
Young, second.
Okay. So Vice Chair Kirschenbaum.
I just
an overview.
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick overview. So we've been meeting with the superintendent since the end of September. The superintendent has reviewed with us his goals, his draft goals. We've given him feedback along the way. And we've finally settled on 4 goals for this year. Goals around student learning, diversity, equity, inclusion, goals around communication, and goals around student retention based on some thorough discussions that we had earlier in this year based on current trends and things that we were hearing both from community members as well as from committee members. We've also settled on consensus around 8 indicators as well, one on curriculum, instruction, environment, and scheduling and management information systems, sharing responsibility and family concerns, and communications and continuous learning. So, Dr. McCall, would you like to speak to your goals?
Sure. I know it's late. I am going to, Chair Weeks, do you want me to bring these up, or do you want me to talk through them quickly?
No, I think you can speak to them. They were in everybody's packet, so I think everybody's been able to review them.
Sure. Okay. Just, real quick, first goal is around superintendent and his team will provide an outline identifying and prioritizing improvements to tech resource acquisition and newly discovered educational best practices that informs the vision of our next strategic plan. So this is really around, looking at what we're currently doing in terms of our we called it modern learning, but, how are we now using that to help us develop a vision for our next strategic plan, which is coming up very soon. And what I shared with you was the plan with the action steps and dates associated with that. For goal 2, as part of a district improvement goal, working with the district and school leadership, superintendent will promote diversity, equity, and inclusion district-wide by defining and outlining sustainable practices needed to transform our culture. So this is really around me leading discussions around equity. This is kind of a carryover goal that I was unable to complete last year because of COVID that kicked in. So it takes part of that and carries it through, especially in terms of the book study. Talks about then developing kind of a relationship with a group that we could bring on board to look at how we could incorporate this back into our own program of study, let's say, for staff and students and ultimately the community at large. For goal number 3, professional practice, the superintendent will establish and implement a system that enhances the communication between home and school for all families with school-age children who reside within the district. And this is really around tapping into Deci's building blocks of equitable. It's remote learning, but they have a great kind of framework for looking at communication as well. So it's really looking at improving the whole process of how we communicate with families. And number 4, for district improvement, by the 21st of June 2021, districts will create a plan of action that proactively addresses student retention issues in the school district. And again, all the data that ties back to what we'd be looking at why students are leaving. We'd be interviewing people. We'd be talking about looking at retention trends and so forth, and then really developing a plan that we can share out with the community by the end of it.
Thank you, Dr.
McCall. If I could just say one more thing in support of this motion, and that is the committee expressed that Dr. McCall's leadership skills should be fully incorporated to build capacity, provide vision and management, but not be solely responsible to complete each task for each goal, as delegation is a quality of leadership. It's the hope that through this work, the district will be well positioned to begin the next strategic planning process.
Thank you. That was very well put.
Thanks.
I promise also that I'm not crying. I just have a very angry 4-legged friend behind me that is upset about the late hour. Member Gustafson with a question.
Well, Laura's comment just spoke to one of my questions, which was that I noticed all of the goals were team goals and there were no individual goals this year. But I'm guessing that might be intentional based on your comment. I just noticed that was a change. My second question is there a plan for tracking progress on these goals? I know in the past we've talked about getting monthly updates in the reports, and that has not actually happened. And I'm with these detailed action steps. I hope that is part of the discussion. I have a third question too, but I'll wait because it's about a specific goal. So those are my two main umbrella points, and my third was about the specific goal about diversity and inclusion. Specifically, the action step that is due in March. The first two action steps are talking about things that are definitely carried over from last year and things within the district that I guess the superintendent is leading discussions. One of the things that I recall coming up last year when we did the evaluation and talked about this was the need to have outside input into that rather than leading it ourselves. And we don't get to that in this goal until March. However, I also know, because I'm on the diversity subcommittee, that this piece that is talking about an external consultant in March is actually, I think, being discussed now. So I wondered why it was delayed until March in this goal, when that seemed to be a very key component, because reflecting the kind of work that is encompassed in this goal we talked about in the spring, that you sometimes need to involve an outside perspective to do it well.
Right.
And be effective.
Do you mind if we have Vice Chair Kirschenbaum speak to that?
Yeah, those are my questions about that goal. Thank you.
So in terms of the timeline for review, we have quite a speedy timeline, if you will, because the nature of our approval for these goals is happening much later than would normally be the case. So I guess I'm not going to be very eloquent here because I'm exhausted. But I think that we plan to meet up with the superintendent moving forward very quickly and get some status reports. I hear what you're saying about the outside consultant. My understanding is that is happening sort of concurrently, but things might not be finalized until March for that.
That's helpful. That was what I was hoping. So thank you.
Thank you. Member Long-Balil?
Yes. As everyone has said, it's a late hour, so I may not be as articulate as I might like, but I don't see anything here about ensuring compliance with financial and other regulations. I think should be a piece of this.
Which goal, Linda?
Well, I think it should be a goal. Shouldn't it be a goal? I mean, I'm a little confused, I will admit, because I'm tired. These are district goals, or these are goals in which we're going to measure our superintendent? Sort of.
These are goals for the superintendent for his professional practice and student learning goals for this year.
Right.
We did have a discussion about some other parts of his job that were going to happen anyways, but did not, in terms of there are things that are going to be happening, like creating the groundwork for a strategic plan and generating a budget. There are elements of his job that he is doing anyways that are not necessary. We can't have a goal for every aspect of his job. These are just things that we felt based on feedback, based on current realities, that these were things we'd like to see him focus on. And he would like to also, I mean, these are essentially starting from him.
Right. Well, I mean, I sort of think that ensuring compliance is something that's always important. And it has come up in the recent past, and I really hate bringing this up, just so you know. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Member Ember, comment, question?
Oops. Yeah, hi. So I guess I'm wondering, there are a couple of meetings that I've missed over the past year, and I don't know that I guess the question is, did the full committee ever accept a modified and revised staffing plan? Because if they hadn't, I'm not going to vote yes for this, because well, one, it's late and it's rushed and it's important. But secondly, that was an essential 5-year plan or 7-year plan that the committee really needed to come up with, that was presented to them through the superintendent. And I think it's essential. We have to have a 5 or 7 year or 8-year plan for staffing. And if that's not a goal, I'm not going to vote in favor of this. If the committee, when I was absent, didn't vote on such a thing.
Member Ember, to your point, no, it has not been brought up.
Well, then I can't vote for this because I think it's an essential goal. You know, it wasn't achieved last year, and COVID wasn't, I don't think, a reason for it, even though it was compelling, because it was something that should have been done even a year or two before that. So it's so long in coming, and it's so essential for us to have that I don't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ember. Is there any other discussion on these goals? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. We're going to start with Member Amos. She's left. Member Ayala.
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett.
Bennett, yes.
Member Gustafson.
Oh, I will reluctantly vote yes. I think there's some gaps, but I will vote yes for now.
Member Haber.
I agree with Malaya, but I vote yes.
Member Ember.
No.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Long-Balil.
Long-Balil, no.
Member Otmar.
Otmar, no.
Member Shapiro.
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva.
Silva, yes.
Member Smith. Christina's left. Member Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
The chair votes yes, and the motion passes. I believe next on our agenda tonight was audit advisory. Member Young, I believe there's no update.
No, that I know of.
Okay. And then we had school committee reports. I'm going to pass over the school committee reports. There is no further public comment. So with that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay. Anyone who's left? Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Ember, are you still here? Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Long-Balil?
Long-Balil, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro?
Shapiro, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Thank you. Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
I agree with your four-legged friend. Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me get my dog out. The chair votes yes. Thank you guys so much tonight for your patience. You guys are rock stars. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much.
Good night.